Happy Football Thursday. It's exciting to say that now because NFL football season is here. We got a game today, Ravens versus Chiefs, but we're not here to talk about that. We got college football to talk about, and then we have a special guest tonight as well. But I got my guy Shane Carter in the building. How's it going, Shane?
It's always good. It's that time of year where college football, the NFL, and soon we're gonna get that tiny little window where we have baseball playoffs at the same time as around the NBA is about to start and college and NFL taking off. So we're getting to that real sweet spot of the sports season. So I'm hella excited.
Yeah, absolutely. That part of the baseball, that's the season, the part of the baseball you love to see for sure. But before we get into our show, we got to show some love to our segment and go into our segment is before we get into our segment, we got to talk about our sponsor, W Energy. Looking for that all natural supplement for your next workout, or you trying to do some late night edit work for your podcast or a big test, or you need that quick energy boost, W Energy is for you. Use promo code touchdowns for 10% off your next purchase. So let's get into our segment, and that is our teams. We're going to be talking about your Texas Tech Red Raiders versus the Washington State. Was it the
Cougars.
Cougars? I don't know why I thought about
Washington State Cougars. You're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on who you ask, this game's kind of a pick 'em because some places have Washington State as a 1.5 point favorite. Some places have Tech as a 2.5 point favorite. I think the problem was that Tech kind of wet the bed in week one. They won the game, but Tech has historically had an issue of playing down to their opponent. And they escaped Lubbock with a win over Abilene Christian, who in the past was actually an FCS power, but wasn't so much last year. Granted, they have apparently on their team they have like 10 or 11 transfer portal players from the FBS from like schools like Texas Tech. They have 7 guys from them, Baylor, Auburn, whatever. Either way, that's an opponent really that they should have like came in and dog walked. But they went in there and like after the first quarter, they really just started like letting Abilene Christian really kind of like stay in the game more than they needed to. The defense was off. They really got beat primarily on the running back wheel route. They ran a lot of those drag crosses, which was like downfield pick plays, and also a lot of one-on-one post waggle, like a la Des Bryant type routes. And offensively, they were fine. Offensively, they put up numbers like they were supposed to. They had a 150-yard receiver in Josh Kelly, the Washington State grad transfer. Yeah. 150 yards for Taj Brooks, who only needs 930 rushing yards left on the season to become Tech's all-time leading rusher. And Baron Morton had one of his best games of his career, almost 400 yards, 5 touchdowns. He played to the level we expect a Tech quarterback to play. The offensive line had some holes in it. Washington State had a much better debut in their game against Portland State, 70-30, and they divvied the ball up with different guys on the ground and through the air. And let me get the numbers out. Yeah, they didn't run the ball that much. They had 27 total rushing attempts, but that was from 6 different guys, 6 different players, and the most they got was 2 guys who had 8 carries each. One of which was Wayshawn Parker, who had 96 yards, which, if you can do the math, is 12 yards per carry. He was their primary running back for that game. Really, they divvied up the ball so well that they had, was it 6 guys? 5 guys, sorry. 5 different receivers with at least 1 touchdown. Kyle Williams, who's their number 1 receiver, had over 100 yards and 2 scores. So he's probably the receiver that if they want to be able to stop on defense, that's the guy to look out for. We need to watch out, though, because the number 1 cornerback, Braylon Lux, he's going to be out for this game for Texas Tech. So that's an issue. Plus, TJ Baskerville, their top safety, is questionable for this game. So an already thin secondary going up against one of the better passing attacks they'll see up until Arizona in Week 6 is going to be a problem. So that's all stuff you have to watch out for this game.
So, and then you get to see 2 air raid offenses going at it. So
it's of sorts. Like I think people associate the air raid more with Texas Tech. It's, by the way, this is the Mike Leach Bowl, and because these are 2 programs that Mike Leach brought to prominence, and this is the perfect timing that Washington State actually decided to use this game to officially enshrine Mike Leach into their Sports Hall of Fame, which I thought was very classy and appropriate considering that this is the 2 teams that Mike Leach brought back to prominence in a way. And it looks like Texas actually, and I think these are 2 programs that I think have a lot of respect for one another because they both understand like where they came from. They're both like sort of these afterthought programs in their conferences who will make bowl games, but they were never seen as the powers. In the Pac-10, Pac-12, you always had USC, you always had Oregon, you always had um, I'm trying to think. Well, Arizona's not
Oh,
Arizona.
Washington at times.
Washington, not really even Washington, because Washington well, for like a 10 years straight was kind of like was
Yeah, bad years.
there were nothing. It was mostly Oregon and USC in the Pac-10. Obviously, when they added Utah, they made things a little bit different for them as well. But Washington State was always one of those like teetering teams that was never. They were sometimes at the bottom, sometimes in the middle, but they were never quite at the top. Last year, when they had this year's future Heisman Trophy winner Cam Ward at quarterback, they did really well, but they had no defense to make up for it. And I think in this game, if we bet on how Texas played, this is going to be a game where both teams score north of 40 points, and whichever team is able to make at least one stop is probably who wins the game.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So, what time is that game on, and what channel?
I can double check that. As a matter of fact, it looks like that game is going to be I know it's an evening kickoff. Yeah, it's a 9 o'clock kickoff. It's going to be a Fox kickoff. So it's Fox's game of the week at night. Since it's in Washington, it's going to be it's a 9 o'clock kick here. It'll be 7 o'clock there. So it is going to be a late game.
Yeah.
But I don't mind the late games. As someone who watches college football from the first game to the last game, that's not an issue for me. What's going to be an issue here is that Tech traditionally under Joey McGuire has not always been the best road team. I think they're either at 500 or a little below 500 on the road. And even though Washington State, I don't think will be their toughest opponent on the road this year, they're enough of a threat offensively that they give you some pause. I think as far as defense goes, I don't think they had the personnel to slow down Tech's offense, but there's still these tiny little things in between that give you some pushback. If you're a Tech fan, you need to watch out for. I mentioned to them on offense. On defense, there's no number one guys for defense that you have to I would say watch out for in terms of being a legit threat. But if I had to name any of them, the most obvious one is what's his name? The defensive tackle, Laufu. I can't remember his name, but he's one of their big body guys on the inside. He's really good at stuffing the run. He's one of their top pressure getters. He is probably going to be a threat if you're in terms of the interior defensive line.
Yeah.
In the passing game, probably Stephen Hall. He's the guy. He's their number one corner. He's going to be the guy probably lined up against Josh Kelly whenever Josh Kelly plays more on the outside, even though Josh Kelly's primarily a slot receiver. So watch out for that matchup.
Yeah. So those are your main X factors for this game?
On that aspect, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely will be on the lookout for that game. That's going to be that does seem like a fun game to watch, and I feel like it doesn't go down to who makes the less mistakes on both sides, but I know it's going to be a high scoring game in those 40 or more type of games. So
probably more.
Yeah, if you like those high scoring games like I do, that's definitely a game to watch out when it comes to.
But the next game, I don't think will be as high scoring.
Oh, definitely not. This is going to be one of those games that may not even go to 21 points, in my honest opinion. And that is the Texas Longhorns and their versus Michigan. We're 6.5 favorites, and it's away. And the last time a Michigan lost at home was in 2020, and that's been 4 years. So that's one thing that I noticed about that. And when it comes to Texas Longhorns run defense, they'll be tested against senior Khalil Mullins, who was actually the better running back this game. Last week, Donovan Edwards had a rough start. So I think this time around, Mullins is going to get most of the carries until you see something different with that. And what my keys to victory against them is having Texas got to play a balanced offense, running the passing game how they did last week, utilizing those misdirections, keeping that defense on their toes. They're a smart defense, but they both play like this. Does keep them on the toes type on the defense side and the offense side.
Yep.
So when it comes to their skill position, they have explosive plays like with Jaden Blue, who's a sophomore, and Trey Wisner and Jared Gibson in the running game. But who really stepped up was our freshman Ryan Wingo. He had a really good game. They actually this is from a grain of salt, but Ryan Wingo was the highest rated freshman on PFF. Jonte
Mm-hmm.
Cooks, and you have Bond and Golden. So you got a good rotation of receivers and running backs. And they cannot – and when it comes against the run defense, don't be afraid to rotate the big bodies. I'm talking about Alfred Collins, Norton, and Broughton and Navia, two of the University of Arizona transfers they brought in, because they're going to be tested in this running game against Edwards, and then their backup quarterback, Alex I can't pronounce his name.
Orgy.
Yeah, Orgy. Those are the guys you got to worry about in the running game, in my honest opinion. And then lastly, my X factor for this game, who really stepped up in the run defense, is our nickelback, Jalen Gillabo,
Mm-hmm.
who last week had 5 tackles, 3 run stops, and 2 stuffs, and 0 missed tackles, and he had a 74.9 run defense and led the team in week 1. But
Okay, I'm gonna tell you right now. Like, there's a couple players, like, just from the Michigan standpoint, I want you to look at that you had mentioned. Okay, I don't know whose responsibility this would be. I don't know who plays the star or the jack position on y'all's defense, but whoever is responsible for Colston Loveland, the Michigan tight end, is gonna have his hands full, because even though this Michigan team is not as prolific through the air as they were under J.J. McCarthy, he's their number one guy. And Colston Loveland might be the first tight end drafted in this next draft. He is definitely their go-to receiver in that regard. And that's obviously something you have to watch out for too. And also, if I had to guess, Isaiah Bond is going to be the guy who's going to be lined up against Will Johnson, and Will Johnson is their number one corner, who might be who might be the number one cornerback taken in this past draft as well. He might be a top 3 pick. Very good ball instincts. He's been one of the premier. He's one of the more underrated defenses this season. Not underrated, but just less talked about. And I think, just based on y'all's current roster of receivers, Isaiah Bond to me seems like the one with the highest potential and the one that might be the biggest threat at the moment. He and Ewers seem to have some sort of connection, or at least are developing one right now. And if I had to guess, Johnson is because Michigan loves to have, like, their number one guys cover the other team's number one guys. They're not a standstill defense where the left side stays on the left, right side stays on the right. They shift guys around. Their defense loves to have guys follow. They love matchups. They prefer matchups. And if Johnson is covered up against Bond, that's going to be the matchup that Ewers will want to go to him, but he's likely going to have to go somewhere else with those passes. So, trying to remember who y'all slot receiver. What's his name?
I know you're talking about DeAndre Moore and
DeAndre Moore.
Yeah,
DeAndre Moore. This is going to be a big game for him, because Michigan's going to want to take away the outside guys. They're going to force you inside the middle of the field. They're going to force you to play with the safeties and the linebackers. So whether it's DeAndre Moore or whether they use Jaden Blue or whoever in the backfield as the option, those guys are probably going to get a bulk of the targets, just because Michigan loves to put on a lot of pressure, and they love to make you play away from the outside. They want you to play more in the middle.
Yeah, that's when it comes to it. They got to keep that defense on their toes, because they're a smart defense. And I think I see this game coming to like maybe 21-17 type of game, or maybe I don't see them more than like 21 or 24 points when it comes to UT. Sure. And it's gonna be, what do you think before we have before we get into some Cowboy talk?
Well, the Michigan offense doesn't really scare me as much as it did last year. Last year, Michigan actually had a formidable offense. Regardless how you feel about J.J. McCarthy, he was effective in that offense, and the weapons were used well. But you saw the offense on display against a weaker defense in Fresno, and a lot of those points were points off turnovers. The offense didn't really get the ball moving that much. And even though Texas's defense, I would say Michigan has the better overall defense in this matchup, I don't think that they have enough defense to overcompensate the wear and tear regard. Think of it this way: if Michigan keeps going out there and giving 3 and outs or drives that in without points, they're putting too much pressure on their defense to give them back the ball. And Texas, I think Texas's offense, this is going to be their biggest test of the year up until probably when they get to Georgia midway through the season. And I think this is where they have the hardest time scoring the points. But I do believe Texas has enough offense to score points on there. I don't know if Michigan has enough offense, at least not from what I saw, because I saw enough of this game to be like, okay, if either Michigan's like sleeping on Fresno and they're looking forward next week to Texas, which might have been what happened with Texas Tech. They were sleeping on Abilene Christian, looking forward to Washington State. maybe they have something we haven't seen. But even though I think last year's Texas defense is better than this year's Texas defense, I think they have enough to stop this offense, because I don't think Michigan has enough offense to combat Texas's offense. I think honestly, all Texas offense needs to do is score 24 points. I think we're looking at a 24-10 type game. It's not even like that because I think they're gonna blow them out. I think it's just because I think Texas is gonna get enough opportunities to score points against a formidable defense to where they'll win by a touchdown or more, but they won't. But it's just probably because Michigan doesn't have enough to score on Texas from a personnel standpoint. So I see Texas winning. I see them winning by at least 10.
Okay.
But I'll say 24. I'll say 24-10 right now, though.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. So before we get into have our special guest on the show, we got to talk before we get into the segment. We got to go into our next sponsor, and that is SeatGeek. NFL and college football is here. Why don't you save yourself some money and use promo code Tacos Touchdowns for $20 off your first purchase. Shout out to SeatGeek, and let's get into some Dallas Cowboys versus Cleveland Browns talk. And we have our special guest.
Bring him in.
Yes, we got Casey Kinnamon in the building. And before I gotta introduce him.
Introduce him right. Come on, show some respect.
Yes, I got you. Writer of the OBR, co-host of the Barking Browns, and co-host of All Eyez on Cleveland, our special guest, Casey Kinnamon. How's it going, Casey?
What is up, fellas? I appreciate you guys having me.
Now, me and CK go back a little bit because on my first publication I wrote for was Fansided, and Dog Pound Daily and the Browns community really embraced me for about 2 years when I was writing for them and the Colts and draft coverage. And so I wrote with Casey and guys like him for about 2 years. So me and Casey go back a little bit. And I know right now he's with Brad Ward over on All Eyez on Cleveland. I didn't know about the other podcast, though, so congrats to you, because I know like 7-8 years ago, how long that was, we were all just trying to get into this a little bit. And now here we are, where I'm overloaded with content stuff. And I know you're a busy guy as well. So
yeah,
it just goes to show that, like, if you really want like a career of some sort in this business, you can have it if you're willing to wait your turn and take advantage of the opportunities as they come.
Yeah, embrace the grind. You know what I mean? Like, it's all about putting that work in, and that's what we were doing. Dog Pound Daily, I was there for a long time. Shout out to Randy Gursey. He was the editor.
Randy.
He's still the editor as of today. I don't know how much longer that lasts for him. But yeah, man, it's really cool to link back up with you. You know what I mean? Like, to see how you said, see how it starts and it comes full circle, you know? So catching each other on a different show, that's kind of cool, man.
Yeah, because I was actually on All Eyez on Brad Ward for I've been a guest on his show, I want to say 3 times, whenever we would do a preview of some sort. No, 2 times. 2 times it was to preview because it had been the Amari Cooper trade, and then something else, and then another one was because we were previewing a Browns Cowboys game. That was the one. And that was the game. Unfortunately, and this is a bad memory. This is the game right before Dak, just broke his leg. He's out for the year, and that would have been potentially the second biggest comeback of the season because they had came back earlier that year against the Falcons, and then y'all had that double reverse with Odell Beckham went down the seam. And that took away like all the momentum that Dallas had brought up. So that was a dark year for Cowboys fans.
Yeah, man, Dak was lighting it up too. Like if you remember those first few games, like he was on a pace, and then unfortunately that went down. But he's bounced back, man. Like Dak Prescott that dude is steady Eddie, man. Like you just know he's the North Star, and you know he's going to be good. He's going to be consistent.
North Star, I love that. He is a as I described, a BAMF. A BAMF. I don't want to say what that means. I don't know if we have clearance for those kind of words.
I'm working on that.
Yeah, because like I know on YouTube, if you say stuff like that without flagging it, you get that.
Yeah, I don't want this to be the last Tacos and Touchdown live show for sure.
Oh, hey, we got a comment from MC Lawrence.
He said, "KC."
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
He don't give a damn about us. He's like, "Who's the guest?" Yeah.
He said he got you. But
yeah, I know.
For sure. But my first question, I kind of keep it fun. So if you could create a personal Browns Mount Rushmore, which four legendary Browns players or coaches would you enshrine on it?
So it's any 4 Browns, right?
Yeah, any decade.
Yeah, that's crazy because if you think about the success they had right out of the gate when they became a franchise, you got Jim Brown, you got Otto Graham, you got Paul Brown. Like that takes up 3 spots right away. But if you're looking at winning percentages for quarterbacks, Otto Graham has to be on there. Jim, I consider him the GOAT running back. You could have arguments with some other people, Walter Payton, but Jim's got to be on there. And Paul Brown innovated the way that NFL coaches to this day. He created the combine. He created the headset and the helmet. Like he advanced the game decades. So you got to put those 3 on there.
What about Joe Thomas?
You right? That's what I'm saying, man.
I know Browns fans love Phil Dawson. Not a lot of franchises have love for a kicker the way y'all love Phil.
Yeah. Well, he was there during the dark ages. It was literally him and Josh Cribbs. If it wasn't for those 2, we had nothing. So
God, Josh Cribbs was so much fun to watch, though.
Yeah, it was.
I got to go ahead and say it's Miles.
Oh, you're putting Miles Garrett.
I say Miles. He's there to me, man. We're talking about a guy that if he gets 11.5 sacks this year, he'll be the youngest player ever to 100 sacks.
I didn't even know that. That's a good point.
He'll join Lawrence Taylor on a list of the only 2 players to ever have 12 sacks in 5 straight seasons. Like
if he retired after the season, he would already be a Hall of Famer. He's got 6 Pro Bowls, 3 All Pros, a Defensive Player of the Year win. He's a finalist at least 3 times.
Yeah.
But
he's
been
a bridesmaid a few times.
Yeah, so I think he would be a Hall of Famer if he retired after this year. I think he's got at least 4 more years left in the tank at least. It's just defensive linemen are hard to. It's hard to tell with defensive linemen because they can either get slow automatically or they can just keep it consistent. Like not everybody can be Julius Peppers and play 20 years.
And I think that's the template though. I think if you're looking at a play because his game is based on athleticism, and he's all twitched up. So how much of that can you lose and still be dominant? That's the question. Mm-hmm. He can hang on, but do you want to hang on in your former glory or do you want to, stay at the pinnacle? So, yeah, it's hard to tell how long that'll last. But in my mind, I don't know if he'd be a Hall of Famer today, but we're getting close. And if he turns in one other monster season, possibly another Defensive Player of the Year, if that happens, I think that tilts it in his favor.
I mean, I would put it in the Hall of Fame just because I think he's done enough. I think for every position, there's what I would call the bare minimums of the Hall of Fame. Like if you're a quarterback and you throw for 40 yards or something like that in a career is probably a good minimum. Running backs 10,000 yards, edge rushers at least 90 sacks because there's not a lot of guys that have 100.
Yeah,
there's bare minimums you can reach. How many All-Star games? There's bare minimums you can reach at certain positions that say, okay, he did this. That's enough for the Hall of Fame because this guy, and this guy also had the same, and they're in the Hall of Fame as well. But for Myles Garrett, since we're on that subject, I love what y'all do with him. And Aaron, I want to bring this up with our guy because the key to this game is how we block Myles Garrett. Because when we're starting a rookie left tackle in Tyler Guyton and a rookie center in Cooper Beebe and a returning right tackle in Terrence Steele, who they expect to be a lot more recovered off the ACL tear. If you watch the Browns tape, they love to switch him between left and right defensive end, and even as a head-up nose in pass rush situations. So when they're on 3rd or 4th and long, and it's an obvious pass, they'll put Myles Garrett in that A gap, and they'll run a double A gap blitz with the Mike backer sometimes, and they'll have a stunt with their 5 techniques if they run a 3-man front on the outside where it's a one-on-one matchup with Myles Garrett in the center. So I'm concerned about that, depending on how well Cooper Beebe adjusts going from guard to center out of college.
Well, you guys do the same thing with Micah. Once it gets to be a predictable passing down, they'll get exotic and they'll move that man around, So for both teams, I think that the objective is stay up with the stick, stay out of those 2nd and 9s, 3rd and 8s where you're going to be predictably passing. The Browns have a very deep edge room because for a long time, Myles was a one-man band. And then they finally got some guys to pair with him. Yep. You guys, Darius Smith, Ogbo, Okoronkwo, Alex Wright. They got guys who can create pressure from the interior. So he's not alone now. And then when you do focus all your efforts on him, it frees one of these other guys up. But I agree with you, man. If you look at both their situations, Micah and Garrett, it's very favorable matchups. And it's nothing against Guyton. Guyton just happens to be a rookie in his first NFL start. He does have the advantage of facing Micah during training camp, getting some reps against Max Crosby. He's been brought along faster than most rookies in this situation. But if I turn around and look at the last time Myles had this situation was the 2022 opener against the Carolina Panthers. Ike Ekwonu made his first start against Myles Garrett. He did well until the 3rd quarter. In the 3rd quarter, Myles broke loose. He had 6 pressures, 2 sacks, and a strip fumble.
Yeah, you don't want this guy to break loose.
Well, that's the danger with those type of players, with Micah and Miles. They can literally wreck a game, and it didn't take long either because they can really get after it.
Which is why I expect the Cowboys to run a heavy 12 personnel. I expect them to have a lot of tight end help.
Ferguson,
exactly.
Zeke, you're sending an army over there. Yeah. As we will be doing the same, because if you look on the other side of the ball, our left tackle might be Jack Conklin this weekend.
I was gonna ask about that. Yeah, like, have you heard anything about like the injury, like how Jedrick Wells has looked? Because he looked good last year when he was healthy.
Jed didn't practice that. He was inside working. He's only been on the field once, and he kind of shut it down in the locker room, saying he was just kind of getting a feel for it. So they definitely misdiagnosed his injury, because if they'd known he was going to be out, I guarantee you DeJuan Jones would have got all them left tackle reps in the preseason, because then you get Jack back, you can send Jack to the right, or even James Hudson. He can be a passable right tackle. He's not a left tackle, and if you send him out there, that's no type of plan. Yeah. That is no type of plan. And I don't even feel good for Jack. Like Jack Conklin, people will talk about how he's an all-pro. It's like, yeah, he was in 2020, but he's had two devastating injuries since then. And he hasn't played left tackle. He hasn't started a game at left tackle since 2017.
Yeah, Joe Bitonio was a left tackle more recently than Jack Conklin was.
It says something, right? So this feels like desperation. But we're just getting a taste of our own medicine, because when you're playing Myles Garrett, you feel the same. You're like, whatever your plan was at left tackle, you don't feel great about it, because that's a game wrecker. So that's where the Browns are at right now. And it's not just you guys, man. After we play the Cowboys, we got Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker in week 2. Week 3 is Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns. Week 4 is Max Crosby. So we face a gauntlet of pass rushers right off the rip. And if you're not healthy at tackle, that can spell doom for you real quick.
What's the plan? Because you can't replace Nick Chubb, but y'all would probably like to replicate like the snaps. Like what can we expect from like the replacement running backs? Like how y'all are going to divvy up the snaps with the backfield?
It was hard as hell to keep him off my Mount Rushmore. I love Nick Chubb.
Everyone loves Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is lovable.
That's the other thing. I don't give a shit who you root for. That dude's beloved. Just the way he goes about his business. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So what's the plan? Well, the plan is we're spoiled because of Nick Chubb. So we're used to dudes getting 5.2 a carry, and that's out the window now. So and we talked about it, staying up with the sticks, super important when you got guys teeing off like Micah Parsons. So we're hoping for 3.5, 4 yards a carry. James Ford, and he's had a propensity for hitting big plays, but then having like 3 or 4 plays in a row where nothing. It's just zeros and ones, so it's not consistent. But also he was kind of thrust into it because of the injury. How much has he repped over the summer? Because in my estimation, he's got all the physical tools. It's his eyes that kind of fail him every now and again. So have you got that right? I do know that they went and got Deonta Foreman, and I know Deonta Foreman will fall forward. So it might be a meat and potatoes type running game, kind of boring. But when you've had Nick Chubb for the last 6 years, whoever you get behind that,
kind of spoiled, yeah.
Going into staying on offense, what are your thoughts of like the addition of Jerry Jeudy to your passing game?
They've been collecting dudes that separate. I think that's just the basic formula, and that's what Jeudy is. Judy's a separator. Now, he hasn't had that consistency in the NFL. He's had trouble staying healthy. That's kind of my concern. He kind of gets nicked up easy. But we're talking about someone who can win early, and he's real dangerous with the ball in his hands. I think that they just went, and then you're not asking him to be Superman. He comes into a situation, he's already got Amari Cooper. You've already got David Njoku. So he might be wide receiver too, but he's probably the third passing option. So it's kind of easier for him to slot in and get work. Like this week, he'll probably be working a lot on the slot against Jordan Lewis, and he'll probably get some work on the outside against Kalen Carson. I imagine Diggs will get most of the reps against Cooper. But we'll see how Diggs is coming back from his own injury. There's a lot of unknown factors, which you get that a lot of times week 1, but especially when you have so many players that are returning from injury like the Cowboys and the Browns do.
Yeah. I would also throw Elijah Moore, who kind of revived his career with y'all as like that third receiver, who I liked him a lot at Ole Miss. And I think he was just and people go to the Jets players go to the Jets offensively to die. It used to be, no offense, the Browns and the Lions who were that way, but the Browns have somehow since probably 2017, 2018, around that time, they've drafted offensive guys and they're actually still good players.
It was that game where we unlocked the fridge when we finally got that win against the Jets on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah.
That might have been the turning point. Yeah, that might have been the turning point. Yeah. I was actually going to ask about Njoku, because I remember early on in his career, because obviously we wrote about him, his issues were like his inconsistent run blocking, and he was not a reliable receiver. He had hit the ball with him in the hands. He was just like the other guys were better options as receivers. And then somehow in the last 4 years, he's not only like revived his career, he's become regarded as one of the better in the league. He's become, I forgot, I think PFF had him at like fourth or fifth best run blocking tight end among qualified, because like you have to have a certain number of snaps to qualify. And then I don't think he's had a drop in 2 years or something like that. He's become a reliable weapon for y'all. So right now the plan for us would be we would have either like a third safety come down and cover him, or more likely an outside linebacker, probably a DeMarvion Overshown or a Damone Clark cover the guy. What's like the biggest for Njoku? What's like his best? I guess you call it the best collection of routes that have made him a more dangerous receiver.
Well, that's kind of where you have to thread the needle, because I think he's going to have to stay in to block more than you want him to in this game. So he's not going to be out doing the stuff because he's super dangerous in the seams.
Sure.
But I think he's probably going to live more in the dump off zone during this game. I think he's just but you touched on it, man. Like, my guy was allergic to blocking when he got here. Like, he didn't have it in him. And he also, I mean, he's got the physical attributes to where he's too fast for linebackers. He's too big for safeties, so he's a walking mismatch. But what happened is when they signed Austin Hooper, he got shuffled to the background, and my guy had to put his head down and work. And to get on the field, he had to be a blocker because it was going to be 12 personnel. It is what it is. So what do you do, man? He turned himself into one of the better all-around tight ends in football, and we kind of seen what it was last year. Our running game failed down the stretch. And when that happened, he became the extension of the running game because he's someone who's easy to get the ball to, and he's punishing. He makes guys make business decisions, point blank, and like he can be that guy you can kind of run your offense through, and he's super easy to get the ball to because it's literally, it can just be dump offs because he led all tight ends in yards after the catch. That's the kind of athlete that he is. But yeah, against you guys, like, how far is he going to get away from the line of scrimmage? Like, because our backup tight ends aren't blockers. Jordan Akins ain't.
No. Even in Houston, he wouldn't block. In Houston, Jordan Akins was a wide tight end. He was always like out. He was all split on the slot. So that makes a lot of sense.
We only got 2 on the roster. So there we go. You might see Nick Harris. You might see him get used as a fullback or backup center, and they might use him to help with some of those blocking duties. But at the end of the day, I feel like you have to target Njoku at least 8 times a game. If it's less than that, that's malpractice. But I don't know if you'll get that number in this game just based on the assignment.
Staying on the David Njoku thing, one match I'm looking at is Wanye Thomas versus him. What do you think how that matchup will pan out between those two?
It's a good question, man. It's a good question. I'm biased, man.
Do you know enough about Wanye Thomas to really like break that down?
I know base level. I've been studying your guys' roster all week.
That's fine.
Probably actually the last 2 weeks since the last preseason game, I've been digging in. I mean, he's got a lot. I'll tell you what, if he can prove his level against David Njoku, that'll go a long way. But just overall, man, you listed the linebackers: Overshown, Damone Clark. Like, there's guys that can present problems at tight ends, point blank. So if Wanye can keep hold his water against Njoku, man, it'll show a lot to me.
I think what you can expect a lot as a Browns fan offensively is that on the Cowboys defense, because you probably know that Deron Bland's going to be out for this game, at least the first 4 games with the partial fracture in his foot. So the starter is going to be rookie Kalen Carson out of Wake Forest, who I like him as a pick. I just didn't want him to be a starter like this soon. So right now he's going to start on the outside across from Trayvon Diggs, and then Jordan Lewis is going to be in the nickel. So you can probably keep in your mind like the matchups there. I would expect, this isn't a question, I'm just going to tell you how I'm breaking it down. Like, I would expect for Kalen Carson's sake, a lot of Malik Hooker shaved over to his side to give him some extra help behind the second level. Just because if I had to guess, Trayvon Diggs would probably be matched up more than likely against Jerry Jeudy. Trayvon Diggs primarily will play up either against the X receiver or the guy who they know will play more along the boundary. Whereas Amari Cooper loves to play more all across the field, and unless Jerry Jeudy is playing the slot, and this is going back to his Broncos days, I haven't seen him with the Browns. I know he played with y'all. He would play more as a boundary guy. Yeah. So if I had to guess, that would be how the matchup would go out. But if I had, sorry, go ahead. You were going to say something. Go ahead.
Well, there's so many unknown factors with this, man. Zim, how's Zim going to handle this? Is Zim going to let people travel? Like, I guarantee you his plan was different when he had Bland and Diggs, so you don't have to reshuffle the deck a little bit here, because there's no free meals on those two guys, and Carson, I've heard he's looked great through camp. Randy Gursey also covers the Cowboys. He's kind of my insider on this, but he's a 5th round rookie. Like, he's going to get tested. He's going to get tested because he's not Diggs. They're going to target him early and often. We don't know if Zim's going to travel. We don't know what Zim's going to do. Zim's been out of the NFL since 2021. He spent the last 2 years as a defensive analyst for Coach Prime at Jackson State and then Colorado, So it'll be interesting to see how he handles that and if he travels or if he matches someone up with Coop or how that works. So I don't know. For the first time in a long time, we have enough receivers with a differentiating skill set. You mentioned Elijah Moore, who was used primarily just in the slot in the quick game, which I like him as a downfield separator personally. He can do the other stuff, but I like him getting loose in the second and third level. But also Cedric Tillman, he's a big body guy. That'll be someone who probably will get most of the boundary work. So it'll be interesting to see, man. I expect them to test Carson. I expect them to test Lewis, and I expect them to probably stay away from Diggs as much as possible.
Probably.
Yeah. Who's one player on the offense that's under the radar outside of the Mari Coopers, the Jerome Fords, and Jerry Jeudy? Who's that in the David Njoku? Who's that guy that people should keep an eye on? It could even be offensive lineman.
Well, it's going to be. I grew up with my hand in the dirt. DeJuan Jones. DeJuan Jones as a pass blocker shuts people down. Just shuts them. He's too big. He's too big and he's got too good of feet. Like if you watch him play basketball, you kind of get it. Yeah. The dude's 6'8" and 3. They list him, I think, at 350, but I think that's north. I think the way I feel about DeJuan Jones is if he wants to be great, he could chase greatness. Like, he has the things you can't coach. Like, his hands are massive. His arms are just vines, and he has surprisingly quick feet for a man that size. And he has to get better as a run blocker. Like, that's where I'm at with him. But as far as a pass blocker, he will shut people down. It was Bosa, it was T.J. Watt, it was whoever they had across from him wasn't getting home.
Yeah, that's a big human being to be going against.
MC Lawrence coming through with a comment again says Cedric Tillman. So they reiterate what Casey said about the big body, because he's what 6'3", 6'4", 220. He's like the prototype. Honestly, the guy I thought was an X factor on the Browns offense. I was thinking offensive line also. I was thinking actually Ethan Posick. Pochich, yeah. Just because I've read a lot of stuff coming out of Cleveland about the inconsistencies there sometimes, and I know that obviously playing between guys like Wyatt Teller and Joel Bitonio is a blessing to have, but if you have a center who has inconsistencies, that's an issue because you see a lot of A-gap blitzes. And I don't know in this game, because I primarily expect to see Micah as an outside edge, but Zim has some and can't play him at the mic as an A-gap blitzer. But more often than not, I would expect the A-gap blitz to come from someone like Osa, Digizua, or a starting 3 technique. Maybe Jordan Phillips, who plays a lot, he doesn't really play a true 1. He's more like a 2 head up, 2 eye. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like not a true nose, but sort of like a shadow type guy. So that would be somewhere like if I had to say watch out for, would be that one. If from the Cowboys standpoint, defensively for y'all, I understand that the Browns defense last year was one of the best ones in the NFL. It shut down a potent 49ers offense, which at the time was rolling. And the guy I want to watch out for is not Denzel Ward, who I think is one of the best cornerbacks in the game, is Greg Newsome, a guy who I was a big fan of at Northwestern. I think he was my 5th or 6th ranked corner that year. I was a big fan. And typically when you play against an all-pro, the expectations of you going even further because you know the teams are going to attack you more. And he has become one of the more underrated outside corners in the NFL primarily because of that. Aaron, for perspective, think about the way that we saw DeRon Bland having to come in off of injury of playing across from Trayvon Diggs because you knew teams were going to attack Trayvon the year after he had. That was the season after he had 11 interceptions. And so if I had to guess, Greg Newsome would probably be lined up against probably Jalen Tolbert, if I had to guess, because I expect Ward to mostly shadow either Cooks or Lamb, depending on if Lamb is playing the Y or the Z. So I think Dak's going to be looking towards Jalen Tolbert, who's our third receiver. And I think that matchup is going to be one that's more an underrated storyline to watch out for, just because Tolbert was kind of a non-factor the first year and a half of his career. But so at the end of last year and even some in training camp, he's come along a little more. But if he really wants to be established in this offense, because he's right now the fourth option if you include Jake Ferguson, this is his first test against Greg Newsome, who is, again, I think one of the more underrated, I would call cornerback 2s in the NFL.
I would honestly argue that he's cornerback 3 on this team. Martin Emerson, MJ Emerson.
Yeah, he's been good too.
He had the lowest quarterback percentage or lowest quarterback rating when targeted last year. He gave up 0 touchdowns, and he saw a ton of targets because he's opposite on the outside of Denzel, and I had Greg in the slot. I'm worried about Greg because he had hamstring surgery before camp.
I didn't see that.
There's not. Yeah, he just got back to practice like last week. Yeah. There's no such thing as a non-invasive hamstring surgery. Like something happened. And if they're going to play him in the slot, man, just the nature of soft tissue stuff like that is like, you got to be reactive. If you're the slot guy, the receiver's got the whole field. So you got to be reactive vertically, east, west, you know what I mean? And I don't know how they're going to roll him out.
Yeah, I would think that just because like I expect the Cowboys to go away from using Lamb and Cooks in the slot as much as possible, which is why I think he's primarily going to be head up against Jalen Tolbert, who Jalen Tolbert is primarily a Z receiver. And for those that don't know, a Z receiver is the guy opposite of your number 1 X guy, who a lot of times will use the field a lot more. When he was in Dallas, Amari Cooper played more of the Z role for perspective. But he'd probably be used. Jalen Tolbert would probably play a lot more slot this week, just so they can use the downfield explosiveness of Cooks, and you want to give Lamb the outside as well, because he started using. Aaron knows this. As the season went along last year, they stopped using Lamb a lot more in the slot, more on the outside. So I think Dak's going to look for the slot still. He loves to use the slot guys, and so like that's a matchup that I was looking out for.
If I'm the Browns, I'm going to put Denzel and Brandon Cooks. I think that's a really good matchup, quick twitch guys against each other. And I would put Emerson on Lamb and Shade to that side. Now, Lamb's so talented. He's going to get his, man. I mean, there's only so much you can do. I mean, we're talking about a guy, I don't care what conversation you're in. He's top 3 in my book. Like you can have guys that are right up there with him, but I think he's a tip of the spear NFL receiver. I think Emerson's on the level. When we had joint practices with the Vikings, Denzel got a concussion like the practice before that. Emerson got all that work against Justin Jefferson, and they went back and forth. Like he was able to hold his own to the point where Jefferson had to talk about him after it was over, about the length and the strength that he plays with. He's a little handsy. He can be physical, but I'm telling you right now, MJ Emerson's a dog. And he's going to be someone, I think, at the end of the season, if he just duplicates what he did last year, I think he'll be on the short list with Patrick Surtain and, Jalen Ramsey and cornerbacks of that ilk.
So yeah, I'm like that breakout player on y'all's defense.
JOK
or Delpit. Take your pick.
JOK was maybe my favorite player in that draft. I remember that draft. The guys I wanted was J.C. Horn in the first round. I wanted JOK in the second round. That's exactly what I wanted. Obviously, J.C. Horn has dealt with injuries, and I obviously am wrong. Micah Parsons was the best defensive player coming out of that draft. But JOK I thought was like easily the best overall defensive player in that draft, and he's got paid like one this past offseason. What did he get? He got like $18 million a year or something like that. He got the Brinks backed up to him.
Yeah, he deserved everything.
And I think that I'm glad they did it now, because I think because he didn't play all the snaps in the early part of the season. He had troubles being consistently on the field, picking up the new defense. And towards the end of the year, he didn't come off the field. So that's my mission for him, is take 95% or greater of the snaps, because he had over 90 tackles and 20 tackles for loss. 20 tackles for loss for an off-ball backer is insanity.
That ain't bad.
No, I mean, the last guy that did that was Luke Kuechly in 2018.
Who?
Maybe you heard of him, And the guy before that was Levante David in 2013. And those guys were all first-team All-Pro for their efforts. So I think that the evolution of him, you could see 25 tackles for loss and 110 tackles if he's just be able to be on the field more.
Who is y'all's tight end neutralizer on the defense? I'm curious.
His name's Grant Delpit.
Grant
Oh,
Douglas.
yeah, Grant.
Okay, so that's the matchup. Okay, because like
Yeah.
Dak's number 2 option is the tight
Yep,
end Jake Ferguson, and
Yeah.
you being a Midwest guy, I know you're aware of him. First of all, are you an Ohio State fan? You're from
Yes, sir. Yes, I am.
Okay, because we were just talking about the Michigan game, and because he writes for to cover the Texas Longhorns. We're previewing that game a little bit, so I just want to get that out there a little bit. But you know about Jake Ferguson, and Jake Ferguson came along strong in his second year last year. He's become this team's number 2 option, and so what's crazy is Grant Delpit. He started off like he was both hurt, he wasn't really playing consistently. He's another guy like Njoku who like as his career has gone along has become a much more established, much more reliable starter. Lo and behold, I thought he was going to be. I thought after his first year and a half, and he's become one of y'all's better players on defense.
Yeah, he's a whiteboard player, man. Like if you go into the team meetings for the week to prepare for the Browns, you're going to circle 95, you're going to circle 6 with JOK, and now you got to circle a new number change for Delpit. It'll be number 9. They're just so versatile. He can obviously. You touched on it. He tore his Achilles in his rookie camp. And that first year is a nothing burger. And with Achilles, the Achilles injury, it's usually not the year after, but the year after before you finally see what they're going to be. And that's what we saw. Is his first year back, he was okay and consistent. But they also didn't have someone to pair him with, so he played a ton of free safety, which he's athletic enough to play free. But where he's really a menace is when you can bring that dude down in the box. And in the box, he can be an overhang linebacker. He can mug up on the nickel, or he's a fantastic blitzer. He had 7 tackles for loss from safety last year. Like, he's a weapon. And the game that I point to is the second time they played the Baltimore Ravens. He shut out Mark Andrews, and you know who Lamar's looking for. Like that's the reason Lamar owns the middle of the field is his propensity to get the ball to his tight ends, likely in Andrews, and that's what Delpit. That for me, that's what has to happen. You're going to have to move him up in the box, get on Ferguson and blank him, because I don't think you can stop Lamb, but you're as well positioned as any cornerback room in the league to at least mitigate it. But I think he can do his steady level best to take Ferguson out. And if you get beat by Jalen Tolbert, so be it. I think that has to be where you try to funnel the ball to if you're the Browns defense.
You ever been to Texas?
Yeah.
You have? Okay, because Aaron asked a question of all of our guests. And I always ask because a lot of people have never been to Texas. They don't really know like the difference in some of the different foods. But Aaron every show we have a guest ask a question, and we want to know your answer. So Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah. So, what is the best taco you ever had? Like in Ohio?
Where'd you get them?
Yeah.
Best tacos.
Best taco. So now, full disclaimer, I live in Greenville, South Carolina now. I moved during the pandemic, and I'm telling you right now, there is a taco truck that hangs out this place called Gather.
Okay.
My God, dude. And I don't care what you're into. Carnitas, if you want shrimp, you want chicken, that's the spot. That's my go-to right there.
It's called Gather?
Tacos off a truck are delicious because they come right off the grill. There's no like simmer down. They give it to you on that little paper plate and they get you good to go. I mean, personally, if I go taco truck, I'm going birria. I don't know if you ever had birria before, but it's like okay.
My daughter gets them. When we go, my daughter gets them. I'll just on your recommendation next time we go, I'll have one.
Let me tell you what it's about. Can I Aaron?
Yeah,
what they do is they cook the tortillas in this thing called consomme, which is sort of like a broth type thing. They cook it in there and they stuff it with Oaxaca cheese and a lot of times either like pork or beef or something like that, whatever it is. Close them up, chop it in half, and they serve it with a thing of consomme, and you dip it into there, and you're basically drinking a taco, and it's the best thing ever, especially if they melt the cheese right. The cheese pull and then into the consomme is it will change your life.
Yeah, it's a life-changing experience.
It is.
Well, I got to be back on air in like 8 minutes, so I'm hungry. Now you guys did this to me.
Hey, you may
think about that for the next hour and a half.
You may have to. You move the show around so you can go get you some birria tacos.
Well, I think Brad's locked and loaded. I think we're about to go live here. And
tell Brad I said what's up for me.
We'll do, man.
Yeah, appreciate you again. Before I let you go, where can they check out your podcast and where they can check out your articles as well?
Yeah, I'm a writer for the OBR. That's at the OBR. I have 2 podcasts. I'm on Barking Browns Tuesdays and Fridays. Thursday nights, All Eyez on Cleveland with Brad Ward. I do live spots on Cleveland.com. I'm all around. And you can find me on Twitter.
Busy man.
Dude, especially this time of year, it just gets ramped up. I'm sure there'll be other shows added as we go, so you'll be able to find me.
Oh, thank you, MC Lawrence. Look, MC Lawrence stayed for the entire show. I love that.
Yeah, appreciate you, MC. Yes, sir. But this has been Tacos and Touchdown Live. We'll be back next week. We got NFL season is here. Y'all have a good one. Peace.